It is incredibly self-defeating, is my view. I just don't understand why we are taking a bunch of tools in our foreign policy toolbox and tossing them into a dumpster.
And I think we need to start giving African countries more of what they want and less of what they don't. That seems like an obvious proposition, but frequently our Africa strategy doesn't seem to be guided by that principle.
Picking a fight with South Africa, a pretty important nation, and labeling them as committing genocide against Afrikaan farmers, accepting Afrikaner refugees while we're shutting off other refugees from Africa.
We are in a state of crisis right now when it comes to our relations with the continent and other competitors of ours, from Iranians to Russians to Chinese to people that don't always align with us, from the Emiratis and others, are flooding the zone where we are retreating in a stunning way.
For decades, America has been controlling Africa, and America has been one of the states that has really controlled Africa at large. America wants to be seen as the only country, that would make rules, would make decisions for every other country in Africa, and for many countries. Because they are superpower, and some things like those ones here in Africa, we've had challenges of doing things ourselves, of working things out ourselves, of making our decisions ourselves, because America has been over and over Africa, and nobody would come out and make their decisions the way they want to make their decisions. But a big change has come, and a big change is coming, considering the fact that Africa right now, some leaders are emerging, leaders that know what they want, leaders that know where they want to go, leaders that understand what they really want. So when these leaders have come, they have the interests of black people, the interests of Africans at heart, and therefore they're not listening to what they're being told to do. They're listening to something else, and they're listening to other people. They're not listening to the masters, the so-called masters, the so-called people who have power, the imperialists and all that. They're listening to their people. I'm talking about Captain Ibrahim Traore. I'm talking about Abdurrahmani Chiani. I'm talking about Assimi Goita. I'm talking about Dr. Arikana Chikombori. I'm talking about Natumbo Nandi Ndaitwa. I'm talking about the president of Botswana, Dumaboko. I'm talking about Julius Malema. I'm talking about PLO Lumumba. I'm talking about every other leader who are talking about the independence of Africa and the freedom of Africa. And since that, America is trying all means possible to make sure that it is taking back what belonged to it, what belonged to them, as they say, because they say Africa is part of them and Africa belongs to them. Okay, that is what they say. That is what they always want. Africa to look like it belongs to them. That is why when Russia tries to get their hands to Africa, they are having problems with Russia. That is why when China tries to put their hands in Africa, they are having problems with China. They don't want China to take over Africa, or rather they don't want China to work with Africa. They don't want any other state to work with Africa. They want to be the only people who have a big say and a huge say in Africa. That is why they came, they took away USAID, thinking that we are going to suffer, simply because we go to a point when we were not listening to them anymore. We were doing things the way we want. We were doing things our own way. And they felt like this way of Africa doing things their own way, and we are giving them help. Let us get our hands out, and then let's see what they're gonna do. So by thinking maybe we're going to suffer and go through pain, Kenya went to China, and they started talking with China and some 1, 2, 3 things. Many countries like Burkina Faso, Mali, Niger, they went to Russia, and America finds it not so good to them. Okay. So when they're being asked questions, they don't know what to say. When they're being asked a lot of questions, they're like, whatever our president is doing, whatever Trump is doing is going to make America fall and all that and all those kind of things. But the truth remains, a time will come when Africa will be an independent continent. And whether you like it or not, whether you accept or not, whether you get a president who will do what is supposed to be done or not, a time is coming when Africa is going to be an independent continent. a free continent where decisions are made from Africa, where things that are supposed to be done are done in Africa, where our resources and everything that belongs to an African person, to a black person, remains for a black person. That time is coming. So whether soon or later, that time will still come. Yeah. I want you to take a look at this video. Tell me what you think about it on the comment section. I'll do my best to make sure I read the comments and give a response where possible. But the truth remains, you and I know that America is now failing. America is finding it difficult to continue getting hold of Africa. Yeah, tell me what you think on the comment section after watching this video, because you know that right now when you come to Africa, many things that are being done in Africa right now. Let's talk about the minerals in Africa. Let's talk about the governments in Africa. Things are changing, and many leaders, few leaders who have decided they're not going to follow the rule of America. They're not going to follow how, like, the sanctions, or rather they're not going to follow the what should I call it? Maybe the instructions that they are being given by the American government, by the imperialists. Those leaders are actually advancing. Those leaders are growing, and the fact that those leaders are growing, they are growing. They are beginning to influence other leaders. I've seen people and many parliaments in Kenya, when the member of parliaments are talking, they are using an example of Captain Ibrahim Traore. And a time will come when everybody will have been influenced by Captain Ibrahim Traore. They will have no otherwise but to follow the way of Captain Ibrahim Traore, because Captain Ibrahim Traore is already changing his people, his country. He's already building his country. He's already making his country a great country. So when leaders come to the parliament, they are asking their president, in Burkina Faso, we've seen this happening. Why can't it happen in our country? In Burkina Faso, we've seen this happening. Why can't it happen in our country? That tells you that a change is coming. And sooner or later, this one will move and spread to the whole continent, and the continent will be free again. Take a look at this video and then tell me what you think on the comment section. Thank you so much for tuning in, and thank you so much for being here. Don't forget to subscribe if you have not subscribed. And for those subscribers who have always been here, I salute you. God bless.
Mr. Missouri, thank you for your testimony. What I hear from both of you is more engagement, not less. More of what we have done that works, and that the abrupt and chaotic closure of a very wide range of our most effective tools for engaging with Africa, from the MCC to YALI to the PEPFAR program, puts all of this at risk. Mr. Chairman, if I might, given your opening comments in the exchange, I'd love to work with you on clarifying the U.S.-Kenya relationship. Their foreign minister and national security advisor were just here last week meeting with the president and folks at the White House, and I agree with you that some of those statements with the PRC are very concerning, given the deep and long relationship and the security relationship we have with regards to al-Shabaab in Somalia.
It's disappointing, to say the least.
You referenced how important it is that there be more students from Africa coming to the United States. Well, I've got a solution for you. It's a 15-year-old program called the Young African Leaders Initiative that has sent 20,000 vetted, promising African students to the United States. The University of Delaware happens to be one of the 20 hosting universities at a very modest cost that is about to be shut down. Not a good idea. It brings promising young African leaders to the United States for a summer to meet with businesses and entrepreneurs, to meet with civil society, to convene in Washington, and then go to 20 different states all over the country. One of many things I don't think we should shut down. To the point you just made, Ambassador Gavin, the Millennium Challenge Corporation, MCC, launched under President Bush, explicitly used corruption and combating corruption, reducing corruption as one of the key indicators for whether or not a country would get a long-term development partnership with the United States. It is all but closed. Most of its staff have been laid off. Many of its compacts have been shut down. PEPFAR, Mr. Meservey, is all but closed. It has been trimmed dramatically from its scope. A 25-year-old program, long deserving of bipartisan support. I'd just be interested in both of you briefly saying, what does it do to our reputation on a continent of 54 countries, a continent with enormous human potential and natural resources, a country that China and Russia see as the continent of the 21st century? What's it do to our place in East Africa and across the continent if we abruptly shut down these long-standing demonstrated and effective programs? Madam Ambassador, and then Mr. Meservey.
Thank you, Senator. It is incredibly self-defeating, is my view. I just don't understand why we are taking a bunch of tools in our foreign policy toolbox and tossing them into a dumpster.
I think the term was a wood chipper.
Okay, I suppose so.
It's tougher to reassemble things that have been put through a wood chipper than things that have gone through a reasoned, considerable review, which is the process that we should have gone through, is to have this body, Congress, work with the new administration to say, okay, trim this, reform this, change this, shutter this, expand this. Yeah. That's not what happened.
No, it's not. And not only have we lit our credibility on fire, and you see particularly China making hay of this, the favorite phrase now is reliable partner. China's a reliable partner. They're not going to abruptly pull the rug out from under you. And I think that, some of the kind of knock-on effects, consider the tens of thousands of health workers in Kenya who are out of work now. These are educated, engaged citizens, and the messaging we want to do about this long relationship with Kenya, it's at odds with their lived experience now. And
I'm about out of time. I've got less than a minute.
Sorry.
Mr. Meservey, if I might. I do agree that a bright spot is the hard work done under the previous administration by Avril Haines in DRC, Rwanda, and it's continuing under Special Advisor Boulos. There's a real chance of peace there. I can't think of a more concentrated example of the PRC-U.S. competition than the two adjacent bases in Djibouti. I've just introduced with Senator Ricketts a bill to try and prioritize focusing on denying the PRC more basing opportunities on the continent. What do you think we ought to make a priority in doing that important work?
Yeah, thank you, Senator, and I'm very pleased to hear about the bill and your attention to this problem. I would especially highlight the danger of an Atlantic Ocean base. We know quite reliably that China has been pursuing such a base for years. It's not hard to see how problematic that would be for security of the American homeland. So I think I mentioned in my original remarks that commercial engagement should be at the heart of a strategy. And I think we need to start giving African countries more of what they want and less of what they don't. That seems like an obvious proposition, but frequently our Africa strategy doesn't seem to be guided by that principle. So the existential crisis that every African government faces is youth unemployment. Yep. And our development assistance and humanitarian assistance, as useful as that is in some contexts, is not going to address those problems. So I think
I do think that the Development Finance Corporation and the MCC really focused on private sector partnerships that fuel growth from the bottom up. I think to the extent we can focus our messaging, our investments, and our partnerships on combating corruption, on being a secure and reliable partner, and on helping create reliable, high-growth jobs, this continent of 4 billion people by the end of this century is a place where we can win in the competition with China. And if we don't, if we continue our retreat, we won't.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thanks to the witnesses for your helpful testimony. I want to return to the chairman's opening comments where he introduced an article into the record and talked about the recent discussion of the Kenyan president in China about this new world order. Let me read from an article that I'd like introduced in the record. Kenya calls for a new world order that reflects global South realities, and this is from KBC Digital, the Kenya Broadcasting Company, if I could introduce it into the record. From April 23, just recently. Speaking during a public lecture at Peking University in Beijing, President William Ruto emphasized the need to fashion a new world order which takes cognizance of present realities. The president, who is in China for a state visit, okay, China is welcoming the Kenyan president for a state visit, said this: the ongoing trade tariff wars could signal the end of the old world order as it has existed since the end of World War II. And further, regarding the relationship between Kenya, China, and the rest of the world, Ruto remarked that Kenya and China are not just trade partners, but, quote, co-architects of a new world order. So his comments are putting the U.S. in the old world order that has not helped the global South. This is what he is asserting, whether or not it's true, how true it is. He's suggesting that the trade wars might be the destruction of the old world order and the creation of a new world order where China and Kenya and other nations focus more attention on the global South. How do we get to a place where the president of Kenya, where we've had this long relationship just 2 weeks ago, is making those assertions in the middle of a state visit to China? I do think comments that have been made by my colleagues, the recent apparent abandonment of PEPFAR, the defunding of USAID, NED, the DFC, the MCC, the YALI program, which also has a presence at the University of Virginia. AFRICOM is not based in Africa and has perennially been under-resourced. It's based in Germany. Picking a fight with South Africa, a pretty important nation, and labeling them as committing genocide against African farmers, accepting Afrikaner refugees while we're shutting off other refugees from Africa. Mr. Survey, you used to work with Church World Service. Church World Service work on refugee issues has been dramatically curtailed. The church I go to is heavily Congolese refugees who have been resettled in Richmond by Catholic Refugee Service. Their work has been curtailed. You know, we don't get the benefit of the doubt necessarily, and people look at evidence and they interpret it as to what it means. And what they're interpreting, the evidence that I've cited and other bits of evidence, is that the U.S. is, you know, to put it charitably, uninterested, and to put it not so charitably, affirmatively disinterested. And that leads a president like President Ruto to make those kinds of comments, almost gleefully hoping that Donald Trump's tariff war will destroy the world order that the U.S. created in the aftermath of World War II to the benefit not only of the United States, but other nations all over the world. We've got to reverse this. We have to reverse it. And I hear this all over Latin America as I travel there. We'd rather deal with you than with China. I think in the Americas, there's even a closer cultural connection because of migration patterns and family ties, but there are with Africa as well. We'd rather deal with you than China, but you got to have something on the table. And China does, and they're not going anywhere. And yeah, the conditions may be bad, and yeah, there are strings attached, and yeah, they may not perform, but they got something on the table. What do you have on the table? The things we've had on the table are being hollowed out.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to start by adding to, I think, some of the sentiments expressed that we have a colossal problem right now by our failing to understand that if you look at all of humanity, the future is in so many ways Africa. We have 1 out of every 4 people on the planet Earth, and by 2050 are going to be on the continent. 1 out of every 3 working age people. The continent is indispensable when it comes to the future strength, opportunities, prosperity, health of Americans. It is stunning to me that we are lacking a vision for engagement with the continent and are making such colossal mistakes. What the Trump administration is doing right now is not only unacceptable, but it is a series of self-inflicted wounds when we cut the kind of programs that have created economic stability and opportunity for American companies, that have gutted public health and our response to public health, because a public health crisis anywhere now is a threat to public health everywhere. We are stopping, especially as we see the Tanzania elections and the Uganda elections and the instabilities there, we're cutting back our resources helping with democratic stability at a time that democracies are under retreat all across the globe, and the democratic freedoms and ideals that we preach are being undermined by forces that don't share our values. We are in a state of crisis right now when it comes to our relations with the continent and other competitors of ours, from Iranians to Russians to Chinese to people that don't always align with us, from the Emiratis and others, are flooding the zone where we are retreating in a stunning way. We are seeing our retreat on public health, on economic empowerment, on national security, and creating a more volatile and dangerous environment where there are forces there that want to see the destruction of America. And there's no place that, to me, that this is more obvious in just this retreat we have, even in where our embassies and consulates that this administration is slating to close. China has embassies in every single country, and we now see a list that consulates and embassies all over the world, but 6 embassies and 2 consulates in Africa, including around the Horn, are being shut down. When I travel through Africa, the power of our presence there, our ability to combat misinformation and propaganda, our ability to create deep partnerships and connection, we are truly pursuing a set of policies that are going to undermine America's safety, security, and economic strength in the future and make us be more targeted by forces from the Red Sea all the way to terrorist attacks here at home based upon the instability and folks who are focusing and targeting and trying to undermine America. And so, I am stunned. I've already been upset in past administrations with our failure to prioritize. But what's happening right now is just utterly stunning, and generations of Americans will pay a price for it unless we find a way, in a bipartisan way, to focus and do more.